over, get behind the swoosh or neck, while the valve looks like glow. Welcome to the LIVELab and our show, Synaptic Rodeo, created by Double Pendulum Collective. This is not our first rodeo. In 2019, remember 2019? Before, well, you know, that was our first rodeo. We are back! Who else was that? Thank you, LIVELab, for inviting us to play again. If you were in the front row, congratulations! You will be in our show. Smile. You will be on camera. Not now. Later. I mean, you could smile now too if you want. You don't need anything. It will be brief, like 5 seconds, maybe 3, 2. You will not be recorded. The show will be almost an hour. Please turn off your cell phones. You can do that now. No photos, no video, no texting. But you can tell everyone you know to come. #LiveLab. There will be a brief Q&A after the performance if you wish to ask any rodeo-related questions. Do not believe everything you think. Before we begin, let's all take a deep breath. Hello, I'm Dr. Laurel Trainer. I'm a real routine person. How many of you here like routines? Anyone like routines? Me too. I like to do the same thing every morning because after that, anything can happen. I wake up at 6 a.m. every morning. In November, it's dark at 6 a.m. And at 6 a.m., my alarm goes off. I'm very familiar with that sound. Every morning, I wake up and that's what I hear. That's the only thing I hear. And the room is always dark, unless it's the summer, but since it's the fall, and it is fall. I was in a dream. I was having a dream that I was in the forest and I couldn't find my way. I suppose it was a nightmare, but for some reason I was calm. I was calm and walking through all the trees and it was dark. But then suddenly, bright flash of light and I heard. So I reached over, I realized I was awake, and I reached over and I turned on the light, as I do every morning, turn on the light at 6 a.m. So I turned on the light, and I see my closet. I had forgotten to close the door. And there is an old woman staring at me. Of course, there is no old woman in my closet. It is a twisted hanger sticking out that looks like an old woman. A failure of the predictive mind. Anyway, I got out from under my warm covers. That is the hardest part when you say, leaving your warmth in the bed. I slipped on my slippers and slipped out of the room into the hallway and to the bathroom. I splashed my face with some water. Splish, splash. Although, of course, I am never awake before I have my tea. No, ma'am. So I pad downstairs and fill the teapot. All seems right with the world when I've had those first few sips of tea. Sip, sip.
Hello, I'm Dr. Laurel Trainer.
Sorry, where was I? Tea, yes. I finished my tea and now I am awake. I do a half-hour Pilates. That's my thing. And then I try to practice my music every day. I don't do that every day, but that's my goal. And then by around 9, it's my time where I try to think about things. Then it's time to go to work and face the rest of my day, the interesting stuff, and the overhead, as I like to call it. Button up my coat and slip out the door. Click, click, click down the street. Heels on cement. I wait at the stoplight as I always do. Wait, wait, wait. It's an annoyingly long stoplight. It's a side street by a main street, so the main street gets all the time, and the side street gets almost no time, no green. So I just have to wait. Tick, tick, tick. I'm waiting perhaps a little impatiently today because I have a lot on my mind. A lot on my mind about work and people at work. Sometimes I find it hard to turn off the logical part of my thinking. I don't know whether I'm a scientist because I think this way, or I think this way because I'm a scientist. I don't know. It's a bit of a chicken and egg thing. But I'm a person who likes things to be logical and make sense. Some of my friends who are more intuitive think I'm a bit crazy sometimes. But I just think they're coming to their conclusions using pre-conscious processes. For me, it's more conscious. Being a neuroscientist affects how I see the world. Today, as I'm waiting a little too impatiently for the too long light to change, I notice that the tree across the street is waving at me. Long, spindly, skinny arms waving up and down, up and down. Of course, the branches are moving in the wind. But it's true that branches look like arms, arms that could be waving at me. It is a windy day, but the sun is still warm on my face. The stoplight is still red. I sigh. The tree sighs too. I have come to think of the brain as an organ that is constantly predicting the future and comparing what actually happens with what it predicted. I think it's one of the main learning mechanisms. So when there's a mismatch, that means that's something you didn't know, you didn't predict correctly. So your model of how the world works wasn't quite right. And it's a way of telling you of what's wrong with your model. So when I thought the tree was waving at me, something was just a little wrong with my predictive model of the world. Finally, the light changes, and I start to walk forward. Click, click, click. I turn right, and then left, and then right again. Ah, the PNB building. Pull open the door and walk in. Click, click, click on the brown tiles. Walk into the little metal box, and we rise up. Down the corridor, through the hall, up the ramp, and onto the stage.
Hello, I am Dr. Laurel Trainer, Director of the LIVELab, and welcome and thank you for attending this lecture. We humans are a result of evolutionary pressures to survive in the ecosystem of the Earth. The ability to locomote, to move towards prey and away from predators, was vitally important to our ancestors, and indeed to our far distant evolutionary predecessors. Even very simple organisms can locomote. For example, a jellyfish with so few neurons, it's questionable whether it has a brain, can get from one place to another in the water. In movements, it's all about the timing. In order to be in the right place at the right time, movements need to be timed. And one of the easiest ways to do this is to use rhythms, because walking and running and other ways of locomoting are repetitive, they are rhythmic, and so they are relatively easy to execute because it's the same movement over and over again. Some parts of the human brain that control movements are evolutionarily ancient. They likely evolved long before we could hear sounds or see objects. So our other senses built on top of our ability to locomote. And so we tend to also hear and see the world organized in rhythmic ways. Our music has rhythms and our speech has rhythms. Even our higher level thought processes have built on top of our ability to locomote. And they have rhythms as well. This is called embodied cognition. The ways we perceive the world and the ways we can think abstractly are all based on the ways that we can move. So we walk rhythmically, we speak rhythmically, and our heartbeats and our breathing are rhythmic. Rhythms are so powerful because their timing regularities enables prediction. When the time interval between beats is the same, is regular, we can predict when the next beat will occur. We humans are very interested in predicting the future. On longer timescales, don't you want to know, for example, how AI will change in the next 5 years? Or perhaps how bad the effects of climate change will be in 5 years? Well, maybe you don't want to know that. But on short timescales, our subconscious brain is continually predicting the future. The next word someone will say, the next note in a melody. And we're only able to make such predictions because of the regularities in the structure of speech and music. Timing regularities are found everywhere in our brains and behaviors. Neural circuits talk to each other rhythmically, and these neural oscillations, or brainwaves, can be measured with EEG. When we perceive a rhythmic stimulus like speech or music, our attention is directed to the beat onsets. Indeed, we process information best at the time of beat onsets, whether it's words or notes. So if you're going to play a wrong note in a melody, play it on an offbeat, not a downbeat, because people will be less likely to notice. So even though we have some idea that we perceive everything and that time unfolds continuously, in fact, we only consciously perceive a small fraction of the information that comes into our eyes and ears and other senses. And we quantize this information, paying more attention at some time points than others. And from this fragmented input, we construct or fill in the gaps to create a continuous experience of a continuous world, and our sense of ourself as living continuously in that world, even though neuroscience tells us that our sensory input is fragmented. What a miracle.
At work, many people need things from me. I am extended out in many ways. Many people rely on me. Many people need my eyes on their work. Many people need me to do things for them so I can continue on, so they can continue on and build on their work. We're all building and making discoveries together.
Humans like to act on the world. We like to make things, change things, and have big effects on the environment. Marvelous as our brains are, they have limitations. And as we have recognized these limitations, we have created technologies to expand our experiences. We can amplify sounds and make electronic sounds to experience things not found in the natural world. We read books and we see plays and movies so we can experience the experiences of other people, at least to some extent. We use computers and cell phones to extend our poor memories and to talk to people around the world. We use virtual reality to extend our experiences and interact in artificial circumstances. We create AI agents who can do our work for us, write our letters, make art and music, and program other AIs. How do these new technologies change who we are as a species and our sense of ourselves? Do they make us appreciate the natural environment more or alienate us from reality? Do they make us feel more connected with other people or less connected?
Now seems like a good time to introduce the creative team on the stage. I'm Dr. Laurel Trainer.
I'm Dr. Laurel Trainer.
I am Dr. Laurel Trainer.
And over here at the media table, we have John Zosky, our sound designer and composer, who is creating all sound live tonight. We have media artist Jim Ruxton, who's creating a live interactive media experience and environment. Jim, would you like to come out here and speak with us for a bit? We're a big fan of this man, Jim.
Hello.
Jim, could you tell us why you brought in this sturdy black house fan?
Okay, this is not a house fan. It's actually a very cool, very sophisticated theatrical fan. The idea being that from a lighting board or from a computer over here, I can actually control the volume of air that comes out of this fan. So it's pretty cool.
Ah, so why did you bring in this sophisticated theater fan?
Okay, in the show we're talking about the idea of the extended body, the idea that we use our tools to extend our body now through technology, extend our body and our mind actually. So for example, in our pockets, many of us have a cell phone, and that cell phone contains memories, contains photos, all the phone numbers that we don't remember anymore. I remember when I was a kid, I could remember like 5 phone numbers. I might know 1 now. So we use technology to extend ourselves. I'm going to show you an example, a more intimate example of extending ourselves. So our breath, for example, is extended out into the world. When we breathe, it goes out into the world. I'm going to show you how to extend it even further into the world.
What is this piece of equipment?
Okay, over here we have this cool 3D printed cone. And inside there's a sensor. And it's an industrial sensor, typically used in buildings to measure the airflow flowing through vents in a building. But I use it to detect my breath. So I can breathe into this, converts my breath into a voltage, goes down through these wires, into a box, into my computer, and turns it into a DMX signal, which this fan understands.
Would you like to give us a demonstration?
Okay, sure. Okay, I'm going to breathe softly into it. Now I'm going to blow harder.
Let's all take a deep breath. Relax into your seat a little more. Notice the position of your legs, the temperature of the air, the angle of your head, and relax. Your organic heart is beating its own rhythm. Beat, beat, beat. All of your hearts beating their own rhythm together. What if?
So, rhythms are found everywhere, in how we walk, how we talk, make music, and even in the electrical waves generated by neurons in our brain. One reason rhythms are so powerful is that the regularity of their timing enables us to predict the future. When footsteps are regular, you can predict when the next one will occur. When a musical beat is regular, you can predict when the next beat will occur. Indeed, we can think about the brain as an organ that is continually predicting the future, comparing its prediction to what actually happens, and generating error signals when its predictions are incorrect. And in this way, the brain can learn from its errors in prediction to do a better job of prediction in the future. But think about this. We feel like we live in the present, but really we are living in the future because we are predicting and thinking about what will happen in the future. And we are also living in the past because we have to remember things that happened in order to determine whether our predictions were correct or not. In short, in both our subconscious and conscious minds, we live in the past when we remember, and we live in the future when we imagine what will happen. So, in our experience, really, the future becomes the past, and a new future appears, And in a way, we experience all of this at the same time.
And we are also living in the past because we have to remember things that happened in order to determine whether our predictions were correct or not. In short, in both our subconscious and conscious minds, we live in the past
And what will happen? So, in our experience, really, the future becomes the past, and a new future appears. And in a way, we experience all of this at the same time. And we are also living in the past because we have to remember things that happened in order to determine whether our predictions were correct or not. In short, in both our subconscious and conscious minds, we live in the past when we remember, and we live in the future when we imagine what will happen. So, in our experience, and in a way, we experience all of this at the same time. And we are also living in the past because we have to remember things that happened in order to determine because we have to remember things that happened in order to determine whether our predictions were correct or not. In short, in both our subconscious and conscious minds, we live in the past when we remember, and we live in the future when we imagine what will happen. So, in our experience, really, the future becomes the past, and a new future appears. And in a way, we because we have to remember things that happened in order to determine whether our predictions were correct or not. In short, in both our subconscious and conscious minds, we live in the past when we remember, and we live in the future when we imagine what will happen. So, in our experience, really, the future becomes the past, and a new future appears, and in a way, we experience all of this at the same time. Most of us have a strong sense of ourself that continues through time, and we feel like we experience the world outside ourselves directly and veridically. So it's disturbing that neuroscience research tells us that information coming into our senses is actually fragmented and not continuous. As our eyes move around, they capture bits and pieces of the visual world. And only in our brain are these bits of information from our eyes and ears and other senses constructed into plausible hypotheses about things in the world. For example, I am aware of you all in the audience, even though I can't see you. It is so easy to trick our brains. Sometimes we don't see big things, like where a magician's rabbit came from, because the magician makes us pay attention to something else. Sometimes we hear sounds that aren't there or see things differently from how they actually are. We also experience ourself as constant and unchanging. But ourself is actually constantly changing. Sometimes we are happy and sometimes we are sad. And who I was as a child is vastly different from who I am today. We are also social beings. We need to interact with other people. Not only do we depend on other people for physical survival, we cannot survive emotionally or stay sane without others. Yet each of us experience ourselves as separate from other people. But what if, just the way neurons in our brain connect to each other to give rise to our sense of consciousness, what if through social interactions, our brains actually interact with other brains and together form a network of brains that gives rise to a consciousness at this higher pan-human level? As individual brains, we would not have access to experience at this level of consciousness. Just as the individual neurons in our brain don't experience the consciousness that arises from their interactions. What if? What if?
I go into my office and I turn on the light. Clink, flash, blink. The room is lit. Everything is bright, light. Blink, blink, blink. I see my clock. I like an old-fashioned clock, so I have one ticking on my wall. Tick, tock, tick, tock. I am 1 p.m. What? It is 1 o'clock. The clock is 1 o'clock. I mean, the clock shows 1 o'clock. Tick, tock, 1:01 o'clock. I walk forward and the wall, the molecules. Oh, here's the, what is this called again? It's we are the, what? Whoa. Tick, tock, tick, tock.
There are a number of theories about how our brain constructs a sense of self. One idea is that we have two networks in the brain, one representing the intrinsic self and one representing the extrinsic self. When the intrinsic network is activated, we engage in reflection and we evaluate how we experience things. When the extrinsic network is activated, we experience ourselves interacting with things in the world, objects like this pencil, and how it feels in my hand, and how I can use it to write on paper. It also involves our experiences of other people. And normally these two networks, reflecting our intrinsic and extrinsic selves, interact to produce our normal overall sense of self. But we can also experience a loss of a sense of self. In mild cases, we can feel detached from ourself, as if we are observing ourself rather than experiencing it. In more severe cases, in schizophrenia or psychosis, for example, parts of our sense of self can detach, and we can experience hallucinations. The fragments of experience that normally get put together into a coherent story can disintegrate. And we can experience the world as fragmented. And we don't know who our self is anymore.
Outside, it is a gray day, but suddenly, bright flash of warm. The sun must have come out, and it is warm, beating at me through the window, beating through the window. Glass? There's no glass? Where does the window begin and the window end? It usually ends, but now it is endless. Now I am the sun, the warmth beating down on the glass. My hand is the glass. The glass is moving. A moving glass. My hand went through the glass. Now I am the window. The glass. The time is ticking forward, tick, 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 through the sun and the glass and the hand. My hand is so vast, We are so wide. Hello, I'm Dr. Laurel Trainer. Who is Laurel? Who is Laurel? I mean, really, who is Laurel? Are we all Laurel?
you'd like to stay for the Q&A, we hope you do. The creative team will just be out in a couple of minutes.
Thank you so much from my side as well. I'm Joshua Schlichting from the research team, and I just have a few notes for our participants tonight. To everyone who participated in our research study tonight, thank you so much for volunteering. As you already heard, there will be a Q&A in just a minute, and after the Q&A, there will still be 2 more components of our research study. A short looking task with the glasses you're wearing to calibrate them, and finally, a post-event survey to ask about your experience of the performance tonight. So please stay in your seats for the Q&A and stay in the seats after the Q&A. I'll be back on stage to guide you through those last 2 components. Should anyone be unable to stay, please just come see me. I'll be just in front of the stage. Thanks, everyone.
They can't be done. Yeah. Okay. Hello, hello.
Yeah, thanks very much. So there was quite a lot that went on up here. So if anyone has any questions, we're more than happy to answer. It's hard for me to see, but.
The hand in the back.
Okay.
To the right.
How did this come together?
Well, the LiveLab put out a call for artists to apply for a residency, which Mr. Jim Rexton saw and got very excited about. So we applied and happily were accepted. And then we played in the LiveLab for at least a year. And the idea that I wanted as a playwright was to allow the technology to lead, as opposed to typically you write a play and then the technology is woven in at a later stage. And so this was allow whatever's happening with all the technology and spiffy things that they're doing to start to show story. And then we began to interview Laurel, just to ask her more questions about neuroscience and the extended body, extended mind. And then as we interviewed her more and I was transcribing my interviews, I was like, wait a minute, should Laurel be in the show? So then I went back and asked her a lot of questions, and then I wove in verbatim and text. That's my part of it. I feel like other people should say other things.
Yeah, we were really lucky to get to spend a couple of years here coming in and working with all the tech and trying to figure out what we could do with it and how we could incorporate it into a show, like the motion capture, how to do the EKG, the heartbeat, and all the stuff that's in this room, which is so specific and so really interesting, like the eyeglasses that track gaze, which are really, they're fairly new for us, I guess new for LiveLab. So it was really fun to figure out what we could do with those. And thank you for wearing them during the show. We're going to see what we get out of that too. Oh yeah, and this, oh yeah, I should talk about the sound too. This room is really special because it's the Meyer Constellation rig, which means that I can walk over here and do this, and all of a sudden, we're in a big, echoey room. And then we're in a really super quiet room. And it's really amazing to be able to change that, and also to be able to make the sound sort of fly through all the speakers. Something, unfortunately, you don't get in the live stream, but for everybody here, it's like a pretty special kind of sound system and room to be in.
Anyone else
Yeah, I had seen the LiveLab, I guess, before the call came out. I was so super excited, to actually come. Once I saw the technology here, I thought, wow, I really got to come to this place and experience it. So yeah, when we responded to the call, we did respond around a subject in neuroscience, some of the subjects of neuroscience. So maybe that's one of the reasons we got the call. I don't know, but anyway, yeah, it's just been a real joy to work with the people here. The tech folks here are amazing. Without them, we couldn't have done this show. But yeah, that's how it came about.
Shall I take the next question? Yeah. Is there any? Yeah.
Yeah, I was just wondering, has AI been used at all in this production? And will you be incorporating AI into future productions?
Okay, I'm going to let the tech people take that question.
There is no AI that I can think of in this production, but definitely we got to use it down the road for sure.
Yeah, we're in the middle of applying for a big grant to get all of the computational power we need to incorporate. So we want to incorporate not only AI, but real-time AI, because that's really what we're about here, is studying interactions as they actually occur. So between musicians, between people, trying to solve a problem, in a classroom setting of mind wandering. So we really are interested in how people interact. And so having virtual partners, for example, can tell us a lot about interactions, because we can manipulate what they're doing. But we want everything in real time too, which is the real hard part, to get the computational energy engines fast enough. But yes, definitely that's on the horizon.
Yes. We're talking about AI and that element. You had such an embodied, physical experience. Does it change with each iteration? Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes, it does. The first time we did this in 2019, I feel like I was a completely different person. So when we come back to remount it, we remount it from where we are now. But even within the piece tonight, the frameworks are set, but the way I interact with it is always different, because it's just different every night. Especially with the mocap. So when I put that funny hat on my head, and John records live what Laurel says. And so it's always just slightly different inflections and slightly different phrasing. So I'm playing with that. And I don't know why, but the mocap always seems like it has a life of its own too. So I'm trying to play with the way it's decided to slow things down and speed things up that night, because we recalibrate almost every night, right? So, and then sort of just playing with your reactions too, how I feel like you're reacting to when I go slower, and sometimes I push it a little more, or I'll go when it goes fast, I might hear a reaction, so I'll sort of play off of that too. So it is different every time. Yeah, what's that? John, do you want to answer that too? Because part of what we're playing is with each other, so we're playing with live interaction, and it's sort of like we have a roadmap, but we never really know where we're going when we're in those sections. You did something different with jellyfish tonight.
Yeah, and it's same for the music. There's a fair amount of improvisation within the music too. There's pieces that are set and sections I know roughly what I'm going to do, but where I go is really, there's a fair amount of freedom to follow where everybody else on stage is going, and to be able to figure out how the timing is going to work today and where we're going with that, with this scene, which is really kind of really fun to be with all this tech and still make it be really present, and in a way that we can interact with everybody here and everybody on stage and the gear on stage too at the same time. So it's really fun. Do we have any other questions? Here.
I have a question. In your presentation, you talk about we're a predictive self. We predict beats, rhythms, and you said when we go back, we can determine whether our predictions were correct. Okay, for a moment, if you're talking about music and your conscious self or whatever is predicting what the next note should be, if that next note is not what you expect it to be, it's not necessarily you were wrong in your prediction. It was the performer was wrong in their execution.
Absolutely. So it depends at what level you're talking. So in terms of my evolutionary brain, it was important to be correctly predicting the environment, right? So, but if there's something that you think the environment is correct in doing one thing and incorrect in doing another thing, then that's sort of a whole other level. But to me, music is one of the most interesting things in terms of prediction, because composers play with our predictive self. So, you know, it would be really boring if we could really 100% of the time predict the next note in a musical piece. So we can predict to some extent, but in something as complex as music, we're actually predicting in a sort of probabilistic way. Like, you know, we think, okay, maybe it's going to be a C next, 50%, but it could be a G, maybe 30%, or F sharp is probably like 2%, or, you know, so we have predictive probabilities. And so if a composer plays with that, so if he always gave us nothing that we ever predicted, then it's just sort of chaos. But if you have a lot of, you know, the time prediction is validated, but then sometimes it's not. It's amazing, and actually those moments are often the most poignant moments in music, the ones that give rise to emotion. So our predictive self is also, and I couldn't tell you everything in one night, but it's also connected to our emotions. So our emotional reactions, we have emotional reactions to different kinds of violations of prediction.
Sure. It also works that if it's too predictable, it becomes background processing and you start thinking about something else. So if there's a part, like if you're listening to a piece of music, pop music, and there's a hi-hat that's just going, that becomes, you know exactly where it's going all the time, so you stop paying attention to it. That becomes background processing. And it's only the prediction errors that jump up to your executive network that you focus on. So it's the things that, and you're predicting on a hierarchical level, so you're doing like, the next bar, the next 8 bars, what the lyrics are doing, what the chords are going to do, if there's lyrics, if it's going to be what instrument, what kind of style of music, is this a song I've heard before, is it from somebody else I know, is it going to be similar to this? All those things are happening at the same time. So when those prediction errors jump up and you get them right, you get a little dopamine reward, and if it's off that sort of curve of probability, then it's like, oh, I was totally wrong. It's my idea of music wrong, it's my idea of this piece wrong, and you have to adjust your model, which is way more work. So it's the balance of trying to figure out to make it slightly predictable, but not too predictable that it becomes background processing. And it also depends on the context too, because if there's people talking, I can't make everything unpredictable because you start talking, listening to music. So when Laurel's doing the lectures, I can do music, but it has to be fairly predictable in order to make sure that you're listening to her and not just the music. So it's always a balance like that you're trying to work on with the audience, and everybody's ability to predict is different, everybody's ability to hear is different, and everybody's model of what they've heard as music is different. So it's a little bit of a guessing game all the time, which is really fun.
Did somebody there have a question? Oh, yeah, earlier.
I was just wondering how your own perceptions of consciousness and identity and thought changed through the process of creating this work over the last year or two.
Oh, glad I can't answer that first.
I guess because we were doing this project, I read a lot of things about the predictive mind. I hadn't really thought about the predictive mind so much, so definitely that impacted. And that whole idea of the extended body, the idea that these tools that we use are part of our body, and how far does our body reach? You know, how far does that extend into the world when we're using these kind of tools? You know, is the internet part of our body now? How far does that go? So totally, it really changed the way I thought about consciousness and where my consciousness begins and where it ends. Although all those questions became much bigger to me. And maybe Julie might have had some things.
It blew my mind. Honestly, like working with these fabulous people up here who are always coming up with these ideas, and I'm like, what? And even just embodying Laurel's words, like the future becomes the past and the past becomes the future. Just feeling that in my self, in my movement, it sort of changes the way I move out in the world. Sort of like, did you see Everything Everywhere All at Once? Yeah. So after, I was like, that's what Laurel says, that's what she was talking about. Yeah, so just all of the concepts that we've played with, I carry with me, and it changes the way I see everything. Yeah. Even tonight, Laurel said something, I'm like, whoa, yeah.
It's like
Yeah, I might say for me too, because I can get into a very logical frame of mind when I'm thinking about these things, and I love music and art, and to see this stuff expressed this way, it makes it more real somehow. It makes it very visceral, in a way that, you know, the science is there, yes, but it's actually us, and we're experiencing this. It becomes, through the art, to me, it becomes much more real.
I was very tripped out tonight watching Julia when you were dancing. So I was like, that's my physical side. I was like, whoa, split selves. And I was saying, I always hear something different in Laurel's speeches every night. I'm always like, whoa. I was thinking, I can't remember what I was thinking tonight, but yeah, that we're different people all the time. Yeah, and because every night, I always say, like, every audience has a different personality, and so then you're kind of different every night on stage. So I was thinking about that. Did you want to answer? And then also someone has a very enthusiastic question, which is great. Did you want to ask your question?
How did you choreograph the kaleidoscope?
Well, it's I'm using some software called Pure Data that allowed me to do that, but it's talking about prediction. That's very unpredictable, right? Julia can talk about that.
It's a little crazy to try and, like, because the camera angle, like, sort of goes that way, but I have to find myself in the camera, and then once I find myself, it's not who I think it is. So it's like I'm actually, like, this hand is there, but when you see it on the screen, so I have to kind of move my fingers to find where the camera picks me up and how Jim is processing it. So it feels different every night because as the slightest change of the camera changes everything. Like, I felt like the pencil tonight. I was like, where is that pencil? Like, I had to really try and, so the choreography comes from that discovery of the interaction between, and the discovery of when Anna brings me something new, like, how is that gonna play tonight, and playing with that. And so and the lights affect it too. So when the lights change, like, I'm not really paying attention around me because I'm so focused on trying to find myself in that kaleidoscope. So the choreography just comes from that, like, just trying to find what's going on. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just wondering about the term predictability. When I listen to today's contemporary music, I find it very predictable, almost to the point of being marketed that way so that people can relate to it very quickly and it sells very quickly. Whereas classical composers, I don't find it as predictable. There's variances, many variances. Could you just talk about that a little bit, please?
Yeah, I think that's true. And part of it is, part of it is how predictable, you know, things are, make people feel very comfortable. You know, if you remember back to your childhood, or if you have kids, they want to hear the same story over and over and over again. They want to hear the same song over and over and over again. So for them, that familiarity is very comforting. And I think for adults too, you know, after you haven't heard one of those pop songs for a while, it's comforting to hear it again. It's familiar, it makes us feel comfortable. And yes, I think that is a marketing tool that's used to make people feel that way. So different styles have different amounts of complexity. So I think, for example, in jazz, many people say, you know, the first times they hear jazz, they don't get it, they don't like it. It's too much unpredictability, they can't make sense of it. But once you listen to it for a while, your brain starts to pick up those patterns, and you can see the predictability in it, and then you can appreciate the unpredictability as contrasting with the predictable. And classical composers as well tend to write more complex music, and so they play more, perhaps, with predictability. So there's a lot of factors that go into it, and part of it, of course, is how familiar you are with the genre.
Yeah, I have a question about audience interaction. And live performance is a dialogue. There are many times I wanted to applaud, I wanted to go, yeah, or what, you know, like part of the dialogue, but I felt it would screw things up. And I was just kind of in awe anyway. How would that have affected you? had audiences applauding, even at the end of each segment, shall we say, but. Yeah, there were many contacts.
Yeah, I think.
Feel free.
Yeah, I have to say we have a lot of musicians and other performers come through the LIVELab, and when we ask them, what would you like us to do that something that you would want to know about, they always say, I want to know what the audience is feeling at the time, and. But there's a lot of differences across genres. We had one of my graduate students is a very good hip hop dancer, and we had a hip hop dance competition here. And it blew me away because all through the dance, if people liked something, they cheered, and there was this huge audience response that, at least in Western culture, we typically don't get. But at the same time, I noticed people laughed at some points, and was it a couple days ago, or it was just yesterday, we did sort of a dress rehearsal for 100 high school students, and maybe they're more expressive. They would gasp in the middle, and it actually was really nice.
And applaud. I was going to say, because it has to affect your performance.
Yeah, it was interesting. They also, when I say the line, what's my first line about the position of your, relax more into your seats. There was creaking. Everybody was literally relaxing they were obeying what I was saying. It was yeah, it was really interesting. But we do respond to what you do. Because I ask a couple of questions in the beginning, how many of you, and I can't see very well, but I did see somebody be like me, and then that helps me be more conversational, that kind of thing. So yeah, we're definitely aware that you're there. At the very beginning, some people were looking at their tablets, and I didn't like that. So I stumbled over a line. Yeah.
This is a question for Laurel. It must have been a very...
Which one?
This Laurel. But it must have been a very interesting experience to watch these artists tinkering with the gear here. And we heard a lot, I think especially from Anna, but interviewing you and getting inspiration for what might be captured in the writing of the performance here. I'm interested about the other way around. I'm interested whether what innovations and use of the technology stood out to you for use in future studies.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. So I guess one of the things that I found most intriguing is kind of our simplest technology in a sense is these eyeglasses. Just so much information is captured in the eyes, and how people, where they're looking and what they're looking at, and how these guys could play with that information coming through the glasses. And then when we had the two people looking at each other, and then there's also, of course, there's a camera that goes into the eye to see where the eye's looking, and then there's also the camera that goes out into the world that gives the picture of what the world view is, and just the interaction of those and the ballet of the eyes and so on. And it just made me realize, just that technology alone, there is so much that we could learn about where are people what are they paying attention to, which is why we have these folks here in the audience tonight who are wearing the glasses, and we're going to look at what did they pay attention to. Did they pay attention to the same things, like how much are there individual differences? So, was one person looking at Anna and one person looking at me? Or, when Anna did something interesting, was everybody looking at Anna? So just how we deploy our attention. Because most of the studies that we do of attention are, we take one individual person into our lab, play them a bunch of funny things that aren't very realistic, and, see where they look and how they react. But this is a real world situation, so here we can actually look at how people deploy their attention in a realistic, real world situation.
Just a quick technical question. Is it actually technically possible to play that laser? No, because I dug you're playing the guitar live, which was freaking brilliant, I gotta say.
Oh, thank you.
In every way. Mm-hmm. But I also thought there's so much to see really move and tear and play with the actual laser.
The laser is super fun because it's an analog input from sound card from the guitar. So it's like there's basically no latency, and it's really fast. And every note that I play, I can really see it, and you know, can play stuff for the visual effect as opposed to just the sound, which is also kind of crazy. But the duet I do with Julia is really just me trying to catch her movements and try to sync with it and trying to make it work as close as possible. And it's really fun. It's the joy of doing all this stuff with this crazy tech and still trying to do a live performance that has some, you know, some improvisation. I don't know where exactly she's going to go. I don't know. How's it for you, Julia?
It's fun. It's really fun because it's so clear, like a line in the space, and it just feels like I'm playing it. Yeah.
But that's a great idea because we could combine the motion capture system with the laser if we calibrated it. Good. No. Yeah, because the motion capture is accurate to millimeter, you know, accuracy. So we could. There's lots of things I'm doing that people could put me at a job. But yeah, next time, version 3. That'll be in there. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you. Another question?
2 weeks ago at the workshop, we were talking a little bit about the laser guitar and some of the challenges of like setting that up. And now seeing it tonight, it's super cool. But I guess my question is, what has been the most challenging or like unpredictable tech element for each of you in the show?
You start, Jim.
Anna's heartbeat can be a bit erratic. She can start off like too high already, which is depending on the show, you know. So that's a bit unpredictable for sure. I'd say that's one of the things. And also with technology, you never know. These cameras, they have to be, you know, connected properly. They're Wi-Fi, right? So we're taking the signal through the Wi-Fi system back into that room and then back up here to my computer. So networks can always break down. So that's, you know, pretty unpredictable for sure for me.
Which one? I will pick the mocap, just because sometimes in rehearsal it hasn't worked. So far in the shows it's been awesome, but sometimes like it just doesn't always work. So I'm always praying every time that first time. Yeah. But so far so good.
I don't have to rely on tech as much, except for my mic going on, which John has to do. But I'm very aware of all the things that could go wrong. And even tonight, I don't know if you noticed, there was some like tiny glitch with the camera during Kaleidoscope. Just tiny, tiny, tiny. And I was like, oh God, is it going to work? This is such a good part. So that's kind of like, I'm just in the know of what could go wrong and praying it won't. Because I have a lot of downtime just observing, where I'm not really even need to be in character. So I can think about such things.
Yeah, it's probably the motion capture because it's fussiest. But it's, for me, it's like all the stuff that's all happening at the same time. So motion capture is on going from the cameras here to a computer in the back that goes through Wi-Fi, that goes into my computer, that goes back to control the stuff, and I have to make sure I sample Laurel the right place and keep track of that. And I'm always trying to catch all the mic on and off with my foot pedal, plus play guitar, plus sometimes lean over and grab the thing. So it's like turn on the hazer with the while I'm playing guitar and turning pages. And it's like that kind of stuff is like there's so much of the tech that could all go wrong. Like my computer could crash. Knock on wood, it hasn't. And it's and everything else. Oh, I shouldn't have mentioned that. Now it's going to happen. Yeah. No, but it's kind of amazing that there's so many things that could go wrong with the tech that really haven't, and it's really fun when it all works. But it's all a bit of a typewriter balancing act.
Yeah, for me, the main thing is that they remember to turn the lights on my podium, because I don't have my part memorized. But just on that note, we did have some discussions about, okay, if a tech element doesn't work, what should we do? Should we like stop the show, turn on the house lights and say, come back in 5 minutes? Or should we make it part of the show? And we kind of landed on making it part of the show, that just, you know, dealing with it as, you know, this is what's happening now.
Because we would never know anyway.
we are in lab coats, so you never know.
Who could predict?
Let's hope we don't have to practice it.
Yes.
Yeah, could you talk about the studio a little bit? The number of speakers, the sound system that you use, just could you say a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, it's a Constellation sound system. So I think it's 76 loudspeakers and about 28 microphones. So if you look up, you can see the microphones hanging from the ceiling. There's 28 of them in here. And there's speakers throughout the ceiling and the walls. And so the microphones pick up whatever's happening in here, if it's my voice or music or whatever. And then in real time, they calculate the echoes that need to go through all 76 loudspeakers to produce different acoustics. So here you can see that there's a lot of reverberation with this setting. So what gets fed through the speakers lasts for quite a while. Whereas if we make it really, really dead, yeah, if we make it really dead, so the space is naturally quite dead like this, and so because it's so the tech is going wrong now. Right? But yeah, so we designed the LIVELab. It's its 10th anniversary. It's been here for 10 years, and we designed it to be sort of a blank slate acoustically in here. So it's very low reverberation naturally, and very sound isolated from the outside. So it's actually less than 10 decibels in here, which is extremely quiet. And so because it's kind of this blank slate, we can put things into the room. We can't take things out. I don't know if you have access to any demos, John.
I can't access them, but should we run right now? I don't know.
One's very loud and one's very...
Yeah. Well, this is a really quiet room. This is like the classroom setting, where the room is a little bit not quite as dead. I don't know if I can find the... I have to run different software that's hooked up to a computer. Oh,
Wow.
Yeah, so not only can we change like the acoustics, but we can put sounds in the room to appear to come from anywhere in the room, sort of depending on the timing at which the sounds come out of the different speakers. They reach your ears that's how we localize sounds is if a sound's coming from this side, it reaches this ear a little bit earlier than this ear, and it's a bit louder in this ear than this ear. So using those cues and knowing what they are, we can make it seem like sounds are coming from anywhere.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
These
yeah.
guys all did.
So next time you're here, you'll have to use that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
So just tell your friends to come. We have 2 more shows. And I also just wanted to thank the online audience as well, and hope you enjoyed the show. Hi.
Super short. We're not going to keep you long at all. We just need to do a quick calibration of the glasses. So we just had this conversation about tech failing, right? So the reason that we're doing this little thing now is because we want to understand all the ways that the tech can fail, and the ways that we might not be predicting your gaze properly. So you all know what a QR code is, right? You've all seen those. So we're just going to have one of our graduate students walk around with a QR code, and I'll ask you to look at the center of the QR code. You'll understand what I mean once he comes out with that. He's just over here. So it's going to be quick. We're just going to do 9 points of the QR code, and I guess I should stand out of the way so I'm not in anyone's gaze. Okay, and I think we have a lighting sequence for this as well, so we're going to spotlight these QR codes in order. And actually, in case you didn't know this, a fun fact, people have a strong tendency to look at faces, so I'm going to make sure I turn around. so you don't all look at his face. But the goal would be to look at this center black dot. So if you could all look at that center black dot, just look there for a few seconds. Great. Now we're going to move the point again. And I think we have another spot for this. Yeah, perfect. And again, just look at that center black dot. Great. Thank you. This is the kind of thing that in a lab we usually do on the computer screen, right? But how do you do that in the real world? So it's actually really important that we test this and we figure out what our error is in this kind of situation. Actually, no one's ever done this before. Okay, black dot again. Thank you. We're going to stay at the back for a little bit. This is about understanding how depth affects gaze prediction. Okay, center black dot. Great. We're going to move up. Tresh's doing a great job, right? We're going to give him a round of applause afterwards. Look at the center black dot again. Thank you. Oh yeah, sorry. So we marked these on the stage yesterday. We went around and measured because we need to know exact distances and stuff, but we also need to move their tech out of the way. Great. Okay. I think the podium as well. Okay, look at the dot. Thank you. Now I need to get out of the way. Great. Just a reminder that it's the center black dot. Perfect. There's only 2 more. You're all doing amazing. Thank you for doing this task. This might be the first group calibration ever. Yeah, it really is history in the making.
Susie or Dana, anyone? Can I look around on
All
stage
right,
now?
center black dot. You're all doing an incredible job.
Got it.
Thank you all so much, and let's give it up for Shresh. Okay, and final thing is we're going to come around and get the stuff off of you, and also there's a short survey to do at the end, just to kind of understand a little bit about your experience. And as always, like, you're welcome to skip questions if you don't want to answer something. And just thank you all again so much for participating. It's really helpful. These are some of our graduate students and undergraduates around, so you really help us learn, and it's really meaningful to have you here. I hope you enjoyed the show. And we're all around if you want to ask us anything, and I know the performers will be in the lobby too. So I'll let you do the surveys. Whenever you're ready, just find one of us and we'll take everything from you. Oh, enjoy the performance. Just click next a few times. We just put the same page there a few times so that people wouldn't go ahead with it. Sure. Oh, did it go to a different page?